Good evening, I'm John Norton. The city of Bloomington and town of Normal will spend about $101 million over the next decade to remove lead water pipes leading to people's homes, most of that in Bloomington. WGLT's Charlie Schlenker reports.
By now, most people know how lead can hurt brain development of children and cause organ damage and neurological problems in adults. A lot of people have heard about a serious lead poisoning from the municipal water supply in Flint, Michigan some years ago. Since then, the rate of children diagnosed with ADHD or learning disabilities has doubled in Flint. It's a potential catastrophe in many cities and towns. Bloomington Water Director Ed Andrews says lead was once considered a miracle metal. It's easy to shape and doesn't rust. That was before society knew it could poison people. Andrews says many cities, including Bloomington, had ordinances governing its use.
Up until 1956, it was mandated that I'll call it the gooseneck, the connection from the main to the curb stop, when a developer built a subdivision, that portion of the line had to be lead.
When the ordinance was updated in 1956, the city allowed copper or lead. Andrews says there are no records that developers continued to use lead after 56, but it could have happened. Only in 1982 did the city get rid of lead as an option. And in 1992, the Environmental Protection Agency started requiring communities to test for lead in the water. Bloomington and Normal have not had problems with free lead in the water, nor have most communities. That's because over time a coating forms on the lead lines which minimizes the chance it will leach into drinking water. Ed Andrews says Bloomington's water treatment process even helps.
Part of that is from our filtration process up at the plant. A byproduct is phosphate in that system, so that's part of that coating that you see downstream in the distribution pipes that we benefit from.
The feds have long said leaving lead water service lines around is a bad idea. The EPA requires all communities to inventory their lead lines by mid-April. Bloomington and Normal are both in good shape to meet the deadline. The communities have been working on it for a while. Normal City Manager Pam Reese says the town did some of the inventory years ago when it updated how it measures water use.
When we were installing new meters, the staff had an opportunity to take an inventory of the service line coming into the homes. So that really helped us complete our inventory.
The inventories show Normal has about 100 known or suspected lead or galvanized water service lines. Bloomington has more than 10,000. That's a huge difference. Part of it is the size of the system. Bloomington has about 32,000 total service lines. Normal has half that. John Burkhart is the water director for Normal. He says another part of the explanation is that Bloomington is older. A lot of housing in Normal went up in the 1950s and later when lead wasn't used.
And I also know that the town's been working on replacing lead lines that I've got some data back to in the 80s.
Anytime there was a water shut-off for non-payment or when a water shut-off broke, Normal looked and replaced lead when workers found it. That was long before the EPA started talking about mandated removal of lead lines. Town staff credit then City Manager Dave Anderson and Water Director Joe Martin for getting the early start on the work that is now required. Communities have to replace 10% of the lead lines per year over the next decade. It's not just lead service lines. Normal City Manager Pam Reese says it's galvanized pipe too, sometimes.
The EPA is concerned with proving that galvanized lines were never at one point attached to a lead line. So it's possible that if there's a galvanized service on the private property side, and at one point maybe the municipality had a lead line attached to the valve, that the EPA says there's a chance that that would be at risk.
Lead can attach to the surface of galvanized pipes, but over time the particles can enter your drinking water. Some other cities with infrastructure of about the same age are further along than Bloomington. Often, though, the reason for that progress was not a good thing. Galesburg, for instance, had elevated lead levels during testing of its water, something Bloomington has not had. After a long discussion with the EPA, Galesburg got to work about 20 years ago and is pretty much done with its lead service line problem. Until the 10-year federal mandated deadline to finish the job came down the pike, Bloomington's situation was not as urgent. Bloomington will take the full decade the feds allowed to do the work. Since Normal's scope is so much smaller, the town plans to finish in 2027. Bloomington estimates it will cost $10,000 per service line. Normal estimates slightly less. Nevertheless, Normal Water Director John Burkhart says it will still cost the town $1 million, or 1% of Bloomington's tally.
It's a really challenging scenario with a lot of utilities. Each community is trying to figure out a way that they can get them replaced where the sole burden isn't on them.
Communities traditionally ask homeowners to pay for the portion of the water service line replacement on their properties. The city pays for the distance between the main and the property line. Is it mandated that the homeowner has to pay?
That's I guess a tricky question, because the EPA mandates that the water utility gets it replaced. They don't care how it's done.
Burkhart says Decatur has a program to reimburse homeowners a certain dollar amount for the cost of replacement. He says Springfield has something similar. Normal has offered a zero-interest loan and had precisely one property owner take them up on it. Bloomington is going a different route, according to Ed Andrews.
The city pays all of it. We have built total replacement into our rate increase instead of trying to compel the homeowner for that portion of the line from the curb stop to the house.
If the cities and towns have to do it anyway, why would a property owner volunteer to pay? Normal's John Burkhart.
My opinion, it's the right thing to do is for the homeowner to replace it, because so many homeowners in the town have paid to replace theirs for the last 30, 40 years.
Nevertheless, the town will likely also end up footing the entire bill. Now, Bloomington's Ed Andrews says lead lines inside the house were not common, but other kinds of piping were, including galvanized. You recall galvanized pipes can attract free lead and let it loose over time. It could still be a good idea to replace galvanized pipes inside a residence. That responsibility stays with the homeowner. What are ways a municipality can encourage property owners to check their internal pipes too? Normal City Manager Pam Reese.
Well, I don't have a positive solution or any solution to that issue, frankly.
Bloomington's target is 1,000 line replacements per year. Ed Andrews says there are some logical ways to stack the work. The city will also be replacing 6 miles of water main per year, and it makes sense to do those service lines at the same time. He says water main replacement will start in the older, denser sections of town, also where there are more lead service lines. Andrews says the city will also do batches of lead lines apart from the water mains to make up its annual quota, and there are other places at the top of the list.
There's some in-home daycare facilities. We would ensure that they're not on a lead service. That would be a priority. There's also some low to moderate income neighborhood potential incentives that we can apply for some cost share.
Normal plans to pay for its lead line removal by reallocating money from other projects where the bids came in under the estimate. At a $100 million price tag, Bloomington can't do that. You may recall last November, the Bloomington City Council approved the first water and sewer rate increase in 12 years. A portion of that money will go to lead removal. Another portion will fund water main replacement, and there are other costs to improve water flow system-wide. The first round of the Bloomington rate increase hits May 1. I'm Charlie Schlenker.